Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
Yeah, right. You ever try to be slick with a Tibetan monk? It doesn't exactly work.
Welcome back to the first Grimerica show of 2014. We're going to be chatting with David Weatherly. We recorded the interview right before Christmas, but we're releasing it now, so he's the first of the year. But first, as always, how's it going, Graham?
Hey, man, pretty good.
Welcome back to the Igloo.
Thank you. It's great. We've redone the studio here. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it took a couple days, but we got a little more room. We're a little more comfortable.
Not like it's a studio. It's just a room, really, with a couple microphones.
It's a fucking studio,
And a desk.
bro. It's a studio. Look at this shit. It's morphing more and more from a bedroom into an actual studio every day. Like
Yeah.
the bed from the guest bedroom is now propped up against the wall
With
to
books
gain
on it.
an extra foot of space, a couple feet of space. So it's definitely migrating into a full studio.
Yeah.
I'm moving in a few months, so when I move house, as they say down under, hopefully we will have a room that's completely devoted to Grimerica Enterprises,
It'll be the Grimerica Igloo.
Grimerica Corp.
So how was your experience in the sensory deprivation float tank?
It was good. I suppose it was good. I had fun. About 5 minutes of it, I think, or maybe 10 minutes, I got the real full effect of, well, not the full effect, but I started to feel the effects where I could actually not really feel myself, feel my body. The rest of the time I could feel myself because they told us to cover if we might have any scrapes, to cover them with some Vaseline or something so that the salt doesn't get in there. And I totally forgot I had some scrapes some cuts on the back of my knee. And I hopped in there and I was like, holy fuck. And then I was like, I can just deal with it. So,
And it didn't go away?
no. And then I just like suffered for like probably 5 minutes. And I was like, okay, I'll just get out.
Get the Vaseline out?
Yeah. So I had to get out. I had to dry the back of my knee right off so I could get all the salt shit out of there before I put it on. Dried it off, put on the Vaseline. But my hair was soaked with salt water now. And it's like super salt water, not like ocean salt water.
Oh, yeah,
It's
there's like
more
hundreds
salt
of pounds
than
of Epsom salts. Yeah.
there's more salt than water. And fucking, yeah, so then I hop back. I finally get all this shit done. I hop back in the tank, and like it's like just as I'm lying back down, all the fucking salt water that had ran down my fucking forehead, out of my hair, all drips into my eye just as I lie back down. And I was like, ah. And then again, I tried to tough that out for a couple minutes. So I spent like 5 more minutes in agony. And then I got out, wiped out my eye, and then I was good. I was like, okay, now I'm good. I'm just going to fucking... So I started trying to do it, and then I was like floating around the tank and like bouncing off this side. And then I kind of got into that.
Yeah.
So I was like pinballing myself around for probably another like 10 or 15 minutes.
Did you ever hit it at the top of your head, like against
Yeah.
the edge of the tank? And it feels weird because all your sort of weight is like hitting on the top of your head. So
Yeah.
Darren and I are talking about a sensory deprivation float tank that we went to on the weekend. There's only one in Alberta, actually. This is the only one. Apparently, they just opened a float house in Vancouver with like 4 or 5 of these. And it gets, on some days of the week, it's open 24 hours and it's packed. So anyways, it's a fully insulated, like saltwater, lukewarm, like body temperature bath. And you put earplugs in and you put the lid down and you can't see or hear or feel anything in there, basically.
And you put earplugs in.
Yeah, I said that.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
It would have been
So-
cool to have some headphones,
Yeah, I was thinking about like some Monroe Institute music while you're in there.
but you need waterproof headphones.
Yeah, they've got those.
Do they?
Yeah, they sell them at my gym. So what did you think of that? Not being a real avid meditator or anything like that, being alone with your thoughts, not feeling anything but your mind. How was it?
Well, like I say, I was playing around after the pain and shit. So by that time, and then finally I just stood still. And when you're moving around, you can still tell you're in water because you're kind of splashing around, or not splashing around, but the water's moving, so it's moving up against your body. You can feel it. And then finally, when I got sick of that and I just stood still, that's when it finally got to the point that you can't really feel. But then I think, I'm not sure if I almost like dozed off or didn't doze off, but faded out for a minute there. But it seemed like then it was just the alarm went off and it was time to get the fuck out.
Wow. So it sounds like it went by pretty quick for you, that hour.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for sure. And I was a little late getting in too, so.
As usual.
Yeah.
So for
I
me,
run on Indian time, buddy.
you belong in Mexico.
Yeah, that's it. I think about it.
So for me, it was kind of the opposite because I had a good start, like the first, let's say, 45 minutes or 50 minutes, and then I had to go to the bathroom really bad, and all I could feel was my heartbeat in my junk.
Your junk beat.
Yeah, seriously, just boom, boom, boom. So that last 10 minutes was really quite irritating. But
that's like when you don't want to get out of bed to go for a piss.
yeah, kind of.
Like, fuck it.
I almost
Fuck
got
it.
out. I was like, should I just leave early? And then, but there was one point there where I was super comfortable, super relaxed, couldn't feel a thing, and I was playing around with trying to sort of like leave my body. Like, can I expand my consciousness out? And I sort of tried to like leave the room and the city and the country, like kind of like expand my consciousness out. And I did feel like a sensation of expansion and then contraction afterwards. But of course, I never made it to actually like any astral travel or anything like that.
Yeah, it's too bad it was too last minute for me to track down some good fucking weed brownies or something. Because I had a couple tokes before I went in there, but I would have really.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I would
You
have
didn't
really.
even tell me that.
Well, I assume that would have been a given.
Yeah, kind of.
But I really wanted to get a couple of cookies because that's a totally different ride.
Yeah, but I don't think you want to do that your first time in there. Like it's pretty weird, don't you think?
I don't know. It was just. It would have been cool if I would have been all ripped up. It would have been way easier to just sit there and not move, and easier to detach.
Right.
Definitely, when I smoke, I'm definitely a little more ready to go lucid or whatever you'd call it.
Well, I'm going to try that again a few times. It's really close to my house, so
There you go.
I think I'm going to make it a part of my
regime
practice.
once a week, a weekly soak, or
No,
weekly
maybe
float?
every couple weeks.
Bi-weekly float, tri-weekly float, quadra-weekly float, monthly float, bi-monthly float.
Sure, all the above.
All of the above. I like it. Yeah, I'd definitely try it again.
Cool.
For sure, definitely. And next time, I'd like to be a little more prepared, like I say. And I'd like to look into the waterproof headphones, because I definitely like to listen to some, even if it was just guided meditation or something, because I don't have any fucking discipline or training. So when I'm in there, I'm just, like I say, playing games, bouncing around off the walls.
Splashing around
Yeah.
with salt water in your eyes.
Yeah, exactly. But if I was listening to some fucking didgeridoos and shit, and some fucking lady or trying to tell me to drift off to La La Land, or like that shit we were listening to at Joey's,
Yeah, that might help you out a little
that
bit.
might help me out.
Cool.
Get me started. And maybe I'll start meditating. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe.
I mini meditate all the time, in my opinion.
It's healthy. Yeah, you probably do. So I want to welcome a couple new. Don't we have a new country on the
Bulgaria,
map? Bulgaria.
bitch.
When I was traveling through Bulgaria in 1990, I'll never forget the border guard guy there, because we were driving in our old pickup in our old station wagon, and he sounded like a game show host, like his English. Oh, welcome to Bulgaria. And it was priceless.
Nice. So you've been in Bulgaria. Have you been to almost every country Grimerica's in?
No, not even close, buddy.
No?
No, I'll never be able to now.
Why not?
Too many.
Not sure you can. Go for it. We'll send you on a Grimerica quest.
That's cool. So we got some listener feedback too.
Do we?
Yeah, don't you?
Me? No, I
No,
don't have any.
You don't? Okay, I want to say hi to my cousin Jeff. He's like one of our biggest supporters, listeners now. He's been listening to our podcast backwards, and he's noticing some trends.
Is there any secret messages if you listen to
No,
the audio backwards?
Not backwards like that, like just episodes going back instead of forward in time.
Oh, weird.
So I want to talk to him now that he's probably made it through most of them and see what, because he noticed some trends definitely with our interview style and the way we.
Backwards trends.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, tell him to find out what we like, what he likes, what he doesn't.
Yeah. Well. So what about new bloggers? We have a couple of new bloggers or one?
Yeah, we got a new blog over at Grimerica for Tea in Mind. And then, of course, we have Scattered Sky Spirits, Seeking Paradigm.
Are we going to try and name them all right now?
Paranormal World. Am I missing one?
Jared Grace.
Jared Grace from Down Under. Jared Grace is a Paranormal World. Jared Drake is from Down Under.
Yeah.
I think that's all of them. It'd be real. Oh, Crazy Ufologist.
Yeah.
That's it. I named them all. And I've got a few emails I need to respond to. A couple other people are interested, so it's nice to see that growing.
For sure.
Yeah, the more the merrier.
And we want to try out sort of this this marketing. As wouldn't even call it marketing, but just sort of a campaign to maybe paste a couple Grimerica flyers all over the globe. So I think Jared from New Zealand had an idea, and so Darren's going to make up a PDF of Grimerica, and we're going to put it on the website for you to print out.
My wife is going to.
Yeah, your wife's going to make it.
Can't steal the credit.
Right. So anyways, you can pull it up off the website, print it out, take a picture of yourself, send the picture in.
No, you got to put it up. You got to put. I don't want pictures of people.
No, I said put it up.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Put it up somewhere cool. Take a picture of it.
Yeah, take a picture of it. Now, if you want to send a picture of yourself, sure, but
yeah, you can include yourself for sure.
I guess. Just don't send pictures of yourselves. It's cool. Just send a picture of where you where you put the flyer. And I think we'll throw them up on the website. Maybe we can vote on them, and the winner will win something cool. We'll think of something cool we can give away as a prize. Yeah,
that sounds good. And you can also send the picture if you want to print it out and send it to our P.O. Box. We have a P.O. Box 16033.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, the P.O. Box. So, yeah, if you don't want to email it, if you want to be original and send it in the mail, it's always cool to get, a physical letter in the mail or a postcard. You can go ahead and send it to there.
So check out the website for the P.O. Box, too.
Yeah, just click on Contact, and you'll find the P.O. Box and all the email addresses of myself, Graham, and all the bloggers. Grimerica email addresses are on there as well.
And you had a couple books arrive, right?
Yeah, I had a couple books arrive from our friends over at Inner Traditions. Ironically, the Ancient Giants Who Ruled America. This one's by Richard J. Dewhurst.
Hey, that was just talked about in our podcast last night.
This is our podcast.
Yeah, no, the one with Susan.
Oh, is
B.
this
Martinez.
the one she mentioned?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah, so this kind of goes right in line with what Fritz Zimmerman was talking about.
Fritz Zimmerman.
Fritz Zimmerman, that's what I said.
But you said Fitz.
No, Fitz Zimmerman.
So, and yeah, that's fascinating stuff. The Giants again. And
yeah,
then,
so we'll have to read this, and I don't think we want to do another one on Giants right away, but probably in the a couple months we can go back there for sure. It's definitely an interesting subject.
Yeah, and it seems to be more and more interesting as time goes on, and there's more and more accounts dug up from the past. And then we also got The Secret Influence of the Moon. That's Alien Origins and Occult Powers by Louis Proud.
Louis Proud. So that's more. Is that the one is that like moon base shit?
I don't know. I haven't even read the thing yet. So
let's read the back. What's the back say?
Despite being the most prominent celestial body after the sun, the moon has many qualities that science has yet to explain. Lunar rock samples reveal the moon once had a magnetic field like the Earth, and seismic experiments by NASA suggest the moon is at least partially hollow.
Hollow moon. That's the sound Neil made. Neil and Buzz gonged off the moon.
So anyways, that's the gist of it. Should be cool.
Yeah, we'll give us some time to read those, but that's probably some stuff that'll be coming up, and it takes us a while to get through the books and keep everything rolling. So, but we definitely thank the people over at Inner Traditions for sending them over, and we'll guess to look forward to down the road.
Yeah, and then we also want to talk about an idea that THC has started for donations. That's the Higher Side Chats. We had those guys on a couple episodes ago, and they have a somewhat donation-based program they call it the Money Bomb. So basically, they give away half of their donations on, I think, a monthly basis.
Yeah, something like that, month to month, or every 5 episodes or something like that. They're doing it. And basically, they're just giving away, 50% of the donations go to a random person. To enter, you either need to make a donation or send a postcard. And that's kind of the model. Email's a little too simple, but we think if you send a postcard to the thing, you go on the wall and then you're entered. For the people that just can't afford it, or if you go there and make a small donation of any size, you're entered. And basically, what we'll do is, we're gonna wait till.
Well, we're not doing it yet. Yeah, this is something we're gonna do in the future. Yeah, once we have a big enough listening base, we'll probably start something like that.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a way that everybody can kind of win, and we can cover some of the overhead that the podcast seems to increasingly cost.
Yeah. We don't really like to ask for donations, or I don't really like to ask for donations. But the fact is, this costs us a little bit of money, so we're not in it for the money, but we'd like to eventually cover a portion of our costs at least.
Yeah, exactly, and it just opens up other possibilities down the road as well. I have been working on a donation page of some sort, but I just haven't got around to posting it yet. But that'll be coming down the road, and like I say, of course, the podcast will always be free, but we just want to open up some different avenues that people can support the show if they're looking to.
Yeah, and didn't we get a couple donations
value.
that you wanted to thank somebody from?
Yeah, exactly. We got.
Okay, you look those people up, and I'll keep talking here.
Okay, you keep jibber jabbering.
So we just bought. I also wanted to say, I was noticing our sound was pretty inconsistent. So I actually found a new mic set on Kijiji. So I found exactly what I was looking for. So I got a new mic and a stand, and our studio setup here should make it so that we have better, more consistent sound quality. Hey, Darren?
Yeah, we got this new compressor limiter gate. It gives us a little bit more jam, gives me a lot more control over cutting out background noise and breathing sounds or anything like that, even coughs, tapping, me playing with pens, all that shit. I used to have to take all that out in post-production, but now this thing cuts it out for me, so it's going to cut down the workload, and it gives us a lot more control over our audio in a live setting, which isn't important now, but like we've talked about in the past, we're looking at maybe doing some sort of hangouts or some sort of once in a while program that is actually in real time with maybe a chat room or something like that. I don't think it's something we want to do on a regular basis because that would just put a little bit too much pressure on the show, but once in a while, on a Friday night or something like that, it might be fun.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe once a month or something.
Yeah, it just brings our little Grimerica community a little bit, gives us a chance to get together.
So yeah, it's sounding good so far. And we also wanted to mention our Amazon portal too, because that's a good way to support the show. If you go in through grimerica.ca or .com and you click on the Amazon button, and whatever you buy from there, we get like a tiny, tiny slice. But you don't have to pay anything more. Actually, the costs just come off of Amazon.
Yeah, it's down at the bottom of the page. There's a Canada one and a US one. So you guys, if you're buying shit anyway, I'm sure there's a few other shows out there that have their Amazon portals as well. But hey, at least put us in the rotation.
Exactly.
Use the Grimerica portal for your purchases every once in a while.
Yeah, if you're buying like a new car or a new stereo or a TV.
I bought those cables the other day. I don't even think I used the Grimerica portal.
What?
Yeah, I think I fucking forgot.
Lame.
Yeah, I know. Brutal.
Hey, a new meetup group. I got an email from a new meetup group in Alberta called SAS.
Hey, we should. Before we get to that, I looked up. So for last over Christmas we got 2 donations, randomly. One from Jason, and one from Justin. So thanks, guys. We appreciate it. Actually, the money went into my PayPal account, and it actually covered the January's web hosting costs.
Yeah, perfect. There you go.
Yeah, so the show paid for itself. Thanks, guys. We really appreciate it. And we hope you enjoy the show, and we keep providing you with good stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
We're doing our best.
Yeah.
We're close to our best. Maybe
Yeah.
not always our best.
Yeah, not always, but.
That sounds terrible to say, but
So SAS is a new meetup group in Alberta. It's called
SAS.
Southern
You're joining a group
Alberta-
called SAS.
Southern Alberta Sasquatch Society.
Oh, that's different.
So yeah, because we got to have a Bigfoot episode coming up pretty soon. So I'm going to join that group and see what's going on in Alberta.
Are you guys going to go on expeditions?
I don't know. Maybe. Do you want to come?
No, I just go camping. I don't need to go camping with strangers and spooking each other, unless there's night vision goggles
Or mushrooms?
or mushrooms. I don't want to go eat mushrooms with strangers either. Maybe it could turn out to be a good time, or it could just turn out to be fucking me hiding out in the woods all night. Because that happens
Oh yeah. No, I know.
all the time.
Yeah. So we want to mention we have Daniele Bolelli booked. He's got the podcast The Drunken Taoist. So we want to give everybody a little bit of notice if they want to tweet questions or email questions for him, because he's a fascinating guy and he's got a really cool podcast. When's he on, Darren?
The interview is going to be the 21st of January.
Okay, so coming up pretty quick here, like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys should have fair notice. Usually we never give you guys enough notice, but this time I think you guys should have at least a week or so to get us some questions in. The episode probably won't come out for a week or a week and a half after the interview, but the date of the interview is the 21st, so that's when we'll need the questions in by.
Yeah, cool. Other than that, we got our chat with David Weatherly coming up here.
D-Dub.
D-Dub, the master storyteller.
Master storyteller. Yeah, it was a great episode, great chat. I met Dave at Paradigm Symposium in 2012.
Yeah.
2012. And it was the first time I really ever heard of Black-Eyed Kids, but they were spooky as fuck. And then he's a real super nice guy. We were able to hang out with him a bit there on the last night. I hung out with him for a little while and had a beer with him, and he's just a real cool cat.
Yeah, great. I can't wait to chat with him again too. And we'll probably see him at Paradigm 2014 if we go. All right, so enjoy the episode, and we'll see you on the other side.
In Grimerica tonight, we're going to be chatting with David Weatherly, speaker at Paradigm Symposium the last couple of years, and a renowned author and researcher. But first, as always, how's it going tonight, Graham?
Hey, Darren, I'm doing pretty good. It's nice to be back in the igloo.
Back in the igloo, yeah, back in the saddle, as they say.
Fitting for Calgary.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, we have David Weatherly here. He was a fascinating speaker at the Paradigm Symposium in 2013. As our regular contributor Red Pill Junkie said, he's a master storyteller, and we'll get him to tell that story that made Red Pill say that. But David Weatherly, he's been a paranormal investigator, author, and world explorer, and he's been doing this for over 35 years. He's pursued the world of the strange, investigating cases around the country and abroad. I think he's one of these boots on the ground type guys, and he's written and lectured on a diverse range of topics, including cryptozoology, ancient mysteries, ufology, haunting, shamanism, and psychic phenomena. He's also studied shamanic and magical traditions from elders from numerous cultures, including Europe, Tibet, Native America, and Africa. He studied a range of energy systems from shamanic techniques to Hawaiian Huna and Qigong healing. And he studied with the Taoist masters in China, had an audience with the Dalai Lama, and is a Reiki master. So there's another Reiki master for us, Darren.
Beauty. We can add him to the list. Well, without further ado, welcome to the show, David. We're thrilled to have you on tonight.
Darren and Graham, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
I also wanted to mention some of your books too, David. You've already written at least, you got 3 here, right? The Black-Eyed Children, Strange Intruders, and then the latest one, Tulpas, Thought Forms, and the Web of Life. And that was kind of your main presentation there at Paradigm 2013.
Right, that was a presentation at Paradigm. The book is not out yet. It's kind of in the final stages of being completed. Hopefully, early part of 2014, it should be out.
Cool. Well, we had a lot of people at the symposium looking forward to that book. You were quite the popular guest there.
Black-Eyed Kids was scary as fuck.
Was it?
Yeah. It's a spooky book. My wife won't read it, but it's spooky. I read it in a like a segmented time, but it'll creep you out.
Yeah,
sure.
I'm sort of putting that one off for a little while.
Something about those black-eyed kids, man.
It's a weird topic. It really is. That's what I spoke at the first Paradigm on, and it really kind of creeped a lot of people out. And my buddy Micah Hanks just thought it was a real riot because he was standing outside of the lecture room and saw a couple of people leaving and saying that it was just too creepy for them to sit and listen to these stories. But it's a very weird phenomenon, and it just seems to keep going and going. The more you dig into it, the more there is. And I've moved on now. I'm researching other things and investigating other things, but I still get a lot of emails and people contacting me with their encounters, and there's a lot of other investigators who are still pursuing the topic. I suspect you'll probably see a few more books come out about the whole phenomena over the next couple of years.
So your Strange Intruders book, was that before Black-Eyed Children? Like, did that lead you down the Black-Eyed Kids path?
Actually, no. It's kind of an interesting story because I started writing a book that addressed a whole range of different entity encounters. Strange Intruders is where that title came from. But what happened was when I was working on that book, I started having so many of these black-eyed kid encounters come up, and when I really started to dig in that phenomena, dig into it more for the section of the book, I realized, God, there's so much here. This is a whole book on its own. And, it's the artistic thing kind of takes over, and the creative energy drives in a different direction. And it just turned out that, no, I need to do a whole book about this, because the weird thing about that phenomena, and Darren, I know you've read the book, so you'll know what I'm talking about. There's so many different types of things that you can, link it to. And it's weird because you could argue that they're something demonic. You can argue that they're alien. You can just go down a lot of paths with these things. And that's kind of what I did with the Black-Eyed Children book. So what I did was later on, I went back and readdressed some of the material that I still had kind of hovering around for the second book, which was Strange Intruders. Strange Intruders just came out this past fall.
Oh, right. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was great because it's broken up into, I think, like 23 or 24 chapters. So they're nice and short. You can read them in kind of short bursts, because it's hard to leave a book for me. If I start leaving a book and it's not on a chapter, I get myself in all kinds of trouble.
What do you mean?
Right.
I just kind of get lost in, where I am. And
Oh, okay.
then I end up just going back to the start of the chapter anyway.
And that's kind of what the modern public likes, that type of format. I think it's because our lives become so busy. There's a lot of people that will read, on the bus going to work, or, on breaks and things like that. And I think that format makes it a lot easier. And it was easy to do with that book anyway, because of, doing all the different chapters that explain the similarities between the BK and, the Men in Black or whatever it was.
I don't know. There's so much stuff to touch on here. I'd like to talk to you about your fascinating story from the Paradigm 2013. I mean, we might as well get into that. It was really like the way you told that, and it was that one that you know, the Tulpa story, but you had that real personal twist in there. Maybe we could start by telling that, and then go from there, if you don't mind.
I don't mind. I'm not sure how well it will convey, in a podcast like this, but essentially, first of all, the term Tulpa is Tibetan, and it essentially translates loosely in the Western tongue as thought form or energy being. It's a living physical creature, whether it's a human or an animal, that is created from pure thought. Now, the story that you heard me tell, Graham, in the lecture was sort of what got me into the whole world of the idea of tulpas and the origin of this. And what happened for me on a personal level was I was living in the Washington, D.C. metro area, and I got a call one evening from this friend of mine. He wanted me to join him at a party that was being hosted by the Indian embassy. And, not wanting him to go by himself and not being able to quite turn down when I heard there was an open bar and free food. I was like, okay, I have to do this. So, I got ready and joined him, and we went to this lavish party that was being hosted by the embassy people, and lots of food and drinks, and really fascinating people, quite honestly. DC is such a melting pot, and I really enjoyed a lot of things about living there. One of them was being able to interact with a lot of different cultures and learn a lot of different things, because my interest at the time, it was all the paranormal field, but it was also a lot of different tribal teachings, shamanic traditions, and so forth. So I'm at this party, with all these wide range of people, and they're mingling about, and so am I. I'm meeting people, from India and from other parts of the world. And somewhere in the course of the evening, I noticed that these three men enter the room. The two of them are dressed as Tibetan monks. And the third one is clearly Tibetan. He's kind of short. He's much older. He's wearing what I identified at the time as must just be tribal Tibetan clothing, just village clothing. So, of course, my interest was immediately in spiked, and I thought, wow, I'd like to get to talk to these guys. I hadn't really had a chance to interact with any Tibetan monks, and had a lot of questions, and wanted to explore that avenue some. So, as the party sort of wore on, I found that each time I was kind of not engaged in a conversation, they were busy. They were talking to people, and vice versa. And it just never quite synchronized, and finally, a little bit later in the evening, I finally was free and walking around. Some of the people had left by then, and I searched all over, and then I couldn't find these guys. I thought, gosh, they must have left, missed my opportunity. And I thought, well, okay, maybe another time. So, I started circulating, and my friend and I decided to leave, and I was kind of saying goodbye and kind of having that final contact with a few people I'd interact with in the night. And I turned around to leave, and all of a sudden, standing right there is this elderly Tibetan guy. And I swear, if I'd taken, another step forward, I just would have body slammed him. He was that close. And how in the world he had just come up behind me in complete silence. It was kind of baffling itself. And so here's this little Tibetan guy, and he's standing there, and I'm a tall guy. I'm just over 6 foot, and he's real short, and he's just kind of smiling up at me. And, so when I recovered from the shock of seeing him standing there, I was like, oh, wow. So I introduced myself and greeted him, and there's nothing. This guy just stands there smiling. So there's kind of an awkward pause, I'm thinking, okay. Then I know a little bit of Chinese. So I tried greeting him in Chinese, because a lot of these guys do speak Cantonese at least. And so I tried that, and there's still no response. This guy's still just standing there smiling at me. So now there's this, awkward, like, what the hell do you do with this? It's like, okay. And there's a little Tibetan guy smiling at me, and really, it was probably just a few seconds that passed by. But it's one of those moments that seems longer than it really is. And all of a sudden, this guy says, I am looking for you. You help refugees. And he shoves this piece of paper in my hand. And he says, you'll be here tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. He turns around and walks away. And that's it. And I'm standing here thinking, this is okay. What do I do with this? I look at the paper as an address, I'm thinking, geez. Now, honestly, I'm more shocked at the idea of being somewhere at 6 a.m. in the morning, because weird incidents like this, they happen to me all the time. My whole life they've happened to me. So I'm not overly surprised by the encounter. I'm thinking, oh, geez. Now I get home that night and I'm thinking, 6 a.m. to get somewhere, all the way down, turned out to be in Georgetown. And, from where I lived at the time, I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got to get up so early to, to be at this location. But of course, the curiosity won out over the idea of sleep and, the next morning. So, I make it down to this address. It turns out to be in Georgetown, as I said. Now, for anyone who doesn't know the area, Georgetown is like the posh, one of the upper scale areas of D.C. The houses are extremely expensive and mostly occupied by politicians and lawyers and doctors, So I'm walking along the street and, along the brownstones looking at the numbers. And before I even reach it, I know which one it is, because rolling out into the street is the sound of this Tibetan chanting. And I had to stand there and laugh for a moment thinking, God, I bet the lawyer next door loves this. Because a lot of the people who live there are kind of snooty, and I go up to this brownstone. I get to the door, and this Tibetan guy greets me at the door, ushers me through a room full of monks who are all sitting there doing their chanting, and into this kitchen area. And there's the elderly gentleman I had met at the party. And, I'll kind of skip some things here because not to bore you guys, but essentially, I sit down and started interacting with this guy, and I learned that his name was Tenzin, and he was actually a Bon shaman. Now, Bon shamanism is the native shamanic tradition of Tibet, and in a lot of ways it has sort of melded together with Tibetan Buddhism, and it's one of the reasons you see a lot of the mystical aspects in some of the Tibetan Buddhist practitioners.
Did you say bone shaman?
Yes, B-O-N.
Okay.
So, this gentleman, he essentially says that he had a dream and, knew the people that would help him in this project that he was working on. And I was one of the faces that he recognized from that. So that's why he had sort of summoned me there. And the whole, quote, project that was going on was that, they were helping Tibetan refugees essentially relocate, first get out of Tibet and then relocate to really different parts of the world. A lot of them ended up going to Europe, some to Canada, different parts of the United States. And without getting into any of the history aspect of it, essentially it was because, the Chinese had invaded Tibet in the 50s. And over the course of time, the Chinese military had become more and more repressive on the Tibetan people. So the Tibetan government in exile actually lived in India. And that's why these Tibetans were at the party hosted by the Indian embassy. And, the Indian government has always been very helpful to the Tibetan government in exile. So, essentially what was going on was all these people would come in and once I found out what was going on, I started helping these guys, and it got to be this routine where, this bus would roll up in front of this brownstone in Georgetown, and out would come all these Tibetans who would file into the home, and, we would go to work, arranging travel for them, arranging host families, a whole wide range of other things. Now, to get to the whole purpose behind this story, what happened was during the course of my time working with these guys, there were, this set of monks that Tenzin was with, and they all worked at this project, and I kind of tried to make it a point during my time with them to make personal contact with each one of these guys. Some of them spoke English, some of them spoke a little bit of English, some of them spoke a little Chinese, some of them none at all, but, with the ones that only spoke Tibetan, I would just kind of, use hand gestures, and you communicate however you can.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to connect with each one of these guys over time, except for one young monk who just sort of seemed to snub me. He wouldn't acknowledge me. I tried to bring him tea. He would just turn and walk away. And 2 or 3 incidents happened, and finally I thought I must have done something. I must have offended this guy. So I went to Tenzin when I had the chance, and I said, I think I've offended this monk. I'm really, puzzled, and I want to fix this, And of course, the old man, he's smiling. He says, no offense. And I said, no, I really think I have, because, he won't speak. He won't say anything. No, he is a Tulpa. So, I'm standing there and I'm thinking, Tulpa, I'm trying to place the word. And, he says again, he says, Tulpa. He says, Tulpa. Now, we've all had these moments.
You're going to pretend.
The ego of youth takes over. What I really could have said or should have said was, no, I'm not quite clear. Can you explain? No. What I had to say was, oh, yes.
Yeah, Tulpa.
So, of course, Tenzin smiles still and says, oh, good. And he strolls out of the room, leaving me standing there thinking, what in the heck is a Tulpa? And, I have to preface this with people and say, look, remember, this was not the age of smartphones. I didn't have Google at hand to quickly, see what Wikipedia had to say a Tulpa was. I had no idea. So it drove me nuts the rest of the day. I'm thinking, all right. Finally, I get home that evening, and I had a pretty extensive library even then. Had a lot of books on Eastern traditions. And I swear, I go through every one of them that night, trying to find that bloody word. Not in a one of them. And it's nagging at me because I know I've heard it before. I just know I have, but I just can't place it. So, finally, I give up. It's not in any of the books. And, the next day it comes along, I'm thinking, all right, I don't really have time to go to the National Library or anything like that. There's got to be a way. And I'm thinking, all right, I'm a smart guy. I'm just going to start kind of bringing it up with these other monks and get some clues. Yeah, right. You ever try to be slick with a Tibetan monk? It doesn't exactly work. I'm kind of approaching these guys, and I'm saying leading things like, so he's a Tulpa. And of course, the response I get is, it's Tulpa. Jeez almighty. And I'm thinking, it's got to be some kind of title or something. But so the rest of the week goes by, completely striking out on trying to get any information out of these guys. But I've got this close friend who is just an amazing authority on all things Eastern mysticism and so forth. And he's actually in the Far East this week as the story is happening. And I know, okay, Peter's going to be back this weekend. So as soon as he's in, I rush over and I, visit him. And I'm barely in the door when I'm saying, Peter, what's a Tulpa? And, he's a real easy-paced guy. He looks like he's in a meditative state all the time. He's like, Tulpa, huh? And, it's just driving me more up the wall. And he's like, are you sure they said Tulpa? So I have to explain all of this to him, right? And he's like, okay, well, have a seat, have some coffee, just a minute. And, coffee's probably the last thing I needed at the moment. But he disappears, and he comes back a few minutes later, and he hands me this book by Alexandra David Neal. And I see that book, and my immediate reaction is, oh, damn, John Keel. And, yeah, that probably doesn't make sense to most people, but the way this story wraps up, is the fact that, okay, Alexandra David Neal has this whole section in one of her books about tulpas. And, she had a personal experience with a tulpa, and she was the one who wrote about it, and I suddenly realized, my God, I've read about tulpas through John Keel, Mothman Prophecies, and I'm thinking, this is the last, it's one of those examples of, you're trying to fit something in a box. I'm trying to think strictly in Eastern esoteric terms when I'm trying to remember this phrase, and really I had learned about it from Keel, the years before, and so, essentially, I started delving into the whole thing from there, and learned that, Alexandra David Neal, first of all, is just an incredible woman. She's really amazing. Very few people know who she is. She, during the early 1900s, went into Tibet when it was the Forbidden Kingdom. It was taboo pretty much for Westerners to go there, let alone a Western woman. And this woman, she found a way. She went into the country several times. She would sneak in through China, disguised as a Chinese peasant. She would do all these creative things to get in. And she became really good friends with some of the high lamas in Tibet, and they sort of took her in. And during one of her journeys, and I have to tell this story because this is like the pinnacle Tulpa story, even though I'm getting a little bit off track. Alexandra met this artist who was a Tibetan artist who was fixated on painting this one particular deity. And he did it constantly. Now, she had interacted some with this man, and then he traveled on to his village or whatever. And much, much later, she sees him again. He comes back through this village where she's staying, and as she describes it, he's a completely different man all of a sudden. He's nervous. He seems paranoid. He's really out of sorts. And when she talks to him, she finds out that this deity that he has painted repeatedly is now manifesting itself to him. He's physically seeing this deity. And she doesn't know quite what to make of it. The man, he journeys on, and after he's left, she goes and speaks to one of the high lamas, and she says, what exactly is happening with this man, because he's seen this deity. And the lama says, oh, that's a tulpa. And this lama explains that in the ancient ways, there is a process that a person, a being, can be created from pure thought. Now, she's a little bit dubious about this, and she's like, okay, well, I want to know about this. I want to learn the process. Well, amazingly, they agree to teach it to her. So they teach her the process. They tell her how to do it. So being a Westerner, Alexandra decides that she's not going to focus on anything that's strictly Tibetan because she doesn't want to be influenced unduly. So what she decides to do is to start her meditations and this ritual practice by focusing on the image of this jolly old monk. So, think in terms of like friar type. Mm-hmm. So she's visualizing this jolly Western monk who has the process unfolds that as she follows the instructions from the lamas, she begins to see this monk in her hut. And he begins to take on, more and more form. Now, at first he appears to be just some, almost like an apparition. It becomes more and more solidified. Well, Alexandra goes on a journey with a large group of Tibetans, and they break this camp and they leave. They're traveling, across the wilderness. And as they're traveling, other people in the party begin to see this monk. So he has become a physical he's walking around, he's interacting, he's as a living being. But something happens during the course of this journey. The energy of the monk changes. And she says that where he was jolly and smiling before, now he has a sinister air about him. He sort of leers at her. He begins to frighten her.
Huh.
So she has to go back to the lamas. And she says, she explains the situation. And this is typical of Tibetans. You really, with a lot of elders actually, you really have to know what questions to ask. And you have to make sure you ask every damn question you can think of, because if you don't ask directly and really go into it, they're not going to tell you.
No, you're not getting the in-depth answers, yeah.
Exactly. So, they say, oh, yes, Tulpa can take on its own life and its own purposes. It can start manifesting its own intent. So she's thinking, oh, geez, great. So this thing I've created is taking on, its own life, its own attitude, and clearly, a direction that's not very friendly. So she has to go through this whole process with the monks and say, what do I do now? And they tell her that the only thing she can do now is go through a different set of rituals that dispel the energy that created this tulpa. So it's another process she has to go through to cause this thing to essentially go away. Now, to bring this all the way back around to my personal story with this young monk who I was told was a tulpa, I learned over a period of time that essentially what had happened was there was a monk that was in this group, and he had been a married man whose wife had died early, and they had never had any children. And he was always kind of heartbroken about this. So, knowing a lot of the old ways, this monk retreated into a cave for a long period of time, and when he reemerged, he had a son with him. And this son was a grown man who appeared to be sort of in his 20s maybe, and that, by everyone's definition was a tulpa. This man was very attached to the elder monk. They were always sort of together, and they did look related. Initially when I had met them, and I thought, well, this is father and son, or this is a much younger brother, or something. There's some connection here, familial connection. So I learned over time that that's exactly what happened. This man had created a tulpa of a son, the son that he never had, and I don't. There's no way to really prove 100% that this was the case. All the Tibetans completely believed this, and that was that was their reality. And I heard much later that these particular monks ended up going back to India, and I heard at some later point that the elder monk had died, and that his quote son had just no one really knew what happened to him. He had just sort of disappeared in the aftermath.
Wow. So it sounds like there's some unintentional things going on too, like the painter painting that deity. He wasn't intentionally creating a tulpa, was he? And then when Alexandra, when her tulpa went sideways, didn't sound like that was anything that she had done or not, something that she hadn't done.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
But, it's a fascinating area because I went into this some in the lecture at Paradigm, as you'll remember, Graham, but there were some things that I really wasn't able to touch on a whole lot. One of the things that could be a modern tulpa that we're seeing manifest is the Slenderman. And, I covered the Slenderman in my Strange Intruders book. And the thing is that we know that the Slenderman is a manufactured story. It was created on the internet. It was created as the result of a contest. And at the same time, there's some really strange things happening revolving around this character. I don't know. Do you guys want to hear this?
Yeah, I'm actually looking pictures of these this Slender Man right now.
It's pretty creepy.
It's
probably
creepy.
like probably creepier than the Black-Eyed Kids.
Actually, one thing most people don't know is Graham is actually a Tulpa I created just to help me run the show here. So
that's why he was acting so weird at in the
Paradigm.
park.
yeah, it's hard to transmit.
I was just staring
that far.
blankly at everybody.
Well, I never saw him eat or anything. So,
Yeah.
So how was the Slenderman, like, what was it, a contest to design a character or something like that, or?
Well, what happened with the Slender Man was there was a contest on this forum. The forum's called Something Awful. And this guy posted this idea, and his idea was, let's create a paranormal-themed Photoshop image and make it go viral, make people believe it. So, you know, the contest, it was open. When people first started getting into it, they were, you know, creating all kinds of aliens and cryptids and different kinds of things, and a lot of stuff was, you know, way out there. And then all of a sudden, somebody comes up with something that really initially is much more subtle. And I think that's the real power of why this thing took on so much energy initially. It wasn't way over the top. There was little information about it. It was simply that that there was this figure that had been spotted in photographs lurking in the background of, you know, these disasters, you know, a school fire, you know, a couple of other different things. And he begins to be linked to the disappearance of children and other strange events. And there's a few different photographs that are posted of him. Eventually they started to call him the Slender Man. He appears to be a humanoid figure in a black suit. He's very, very tall, very thin, as the name implies. Often is depicted with extra arms. It's almost octopus-like, but you know, a lot of times they're kind of vaguely, you know, they're almost in the shadows, and it's this weird distortion. It's like you don't quite know what exactly he is. He's depicted as having no real face, just sort of you know, there's an impression almost of maybe eyes and a nose there, but not, you know, not any kind of feature you can notice. And what happened with this contest was that people were so intrigued that the whole thread became just about the Slender Man. All these other people started contributing to this character, and they really built a mythos very quickly. You know, people were posting things that linked the Slender Man to these ancient medieval tales. They would take, someone took a series of woodcuts from the 1500s and, you know, photoshopped them essentially and created this Slender Man type of character in the woodcuts. And, you know, people would post journal entries from different time periods. And in the midst of all this, these guys created a video series called Marble Hornets, and it was done in installments. And without really going too much into it, the gist of the storyline was that this group of people, they were filming a college document or a college film, and it was all about this producer's, you know, hometown. And supposedly this guy suddenly stopped working on the movie and told everybody to go away. And his friend, who's narrating the series, goes and talks to this guy and says, you know, what is it? What's wrong? And, you know, there's implication that this creature, this something, was lurking in the background and stalking this man. And he gives this, the producer gives his friend all this video footage and says, take it away or I'm going to burn it. I don't want to see it again. So there's this whole story that unfolds with this guy trying to find the Slender Man, and then he disappears. And it's you know, it's incredibly good, you know, tense quality for what they were doing. But something really curious happened in the midst of all of this unfolding. The Slender Man idea did start to go somewhat viral on the internet, but independently, people started to report encounters with this thing. So Coast to Coast AM one night gets a frantic call, you know, from someone who swears they've encountered the Slender Man. Other reports start to come into various different sources, and even to this day, you can talk to people. I've talked to people who are absolutely 100% convinced that the Slender Man is real. He was not created on the internet. That was just people sort of telling stories about something that already existed. So, people are seeing this thing and reporting encounters with it, and it becomes very bizarre. Now, we can kind of go down the rabbit hole and go several directions with this thing, because it could indeed be a tulpa that's being created by this, large group consciousness focusing.
By mass hysteria type sort of thing.
Now we've got mass consciousness, focused on the idea that this thing really exists. And fear is a very powerful energy and motivator. And that's, what this thing really, the whole thing around this guy, it's fear, it's terror.
Similar to the Millennium Falcon at the bottom of the Baltic Sea that we created.
Right. So, it could be that that's happening. There's another possibility. And the other possibility is that, this may be the result of some other entity, whether it's an interdimensional entity, whether it's a spirit, whether it's a jinn. I mean, who knows? It could be some other consciousness that is taking advantage of the fact that some people are focusing on the reality of this thing and using that as a vessel to manifest.
Oh, that's interesting.
Maybe it makes the veil a little thinner.
Sure, absolutely.
Even in our culture, in our negative media or those types of things, right? How much of that do we bring on ourselves just from people focusing and being fearful of what they're seeing in the everyday media?
Absolutely. We all co-create our reality, and that occurs on an individual level all the way up to, the society at large, and even we can go as far as a global consciousness. But you can look at scientific evidence that shows, for instance, that people who are terminally ill, who focus on positive things, whether they focus on humor and things that are positive in their life, they have much better results from treatments than people who are convinced they're going to die. So it's amazing stuff. I mean, there's one other Tulpa story that kind of goes into the whole aspect of what happens to all this energy that we produce, whether it's on an individual level or a group level. And that Graham, you'll probably remember this story about Maxwell Grant that I told.
Okay.
This is back to John Keel again. John Keel was called to investigate a supposed haunted house in Greenwich, and when he went to the location, the family living in this house reported that they were seeing this apparition that was kind of scaring them. It appeared to be wearing a large black cloak and this large black hat, slouched hat, and was doing strange things around their home. And Keel, when he started looking at the case, he went back and looked at the history of the house, and he realized that the house had been owned by Walter Gibson. Now, Walter Gibson wrote under the pen name Maxwell Grant, and he was the guy who created The Shadow.
The Shadow.
I remember this now, yeah.
Here's what's absolutely mind-boggling about this. Walter Gibson he wrote over 2 million words a year. This man wrote 2 complete shadow novels per month, sitting in that house.
Imagine if him and Nick got together.
Yeah, oh my God. There'd be no paper for anyone else to print a book, I think I can tell you. But, it's for anybody who's a writer, that's mind-boggling, or any kind of artist, really. Now these aren't, Stephen King length novels. At the time, those were probably, 150, 200 pages, per novel. But it's phenomenal. I mean, he was writing, 2 complete novels a month. He was writing short stories. He was writing articles. And Gibson, he did it all in that house. So, he's sitting in this house for all these years, cranking out this material about the shadow, and all that creative energy seems to have left some kind of residual trace energy, almost an entity, because the spirit these people are seeing, it matches the description of the shadow. So, all this amazing energy that Gibson poured out, there it is in that confined space, and it's possibly, became something on its own.
The shadow is a good guy, though, right?
That's correct. Yeah,
until he takes over his own personality.
Yeah, but he wasn't doing anything particularly negative. It was just what people thought was a spirit. They were creeped out by the idea that something was haunting their house. Now here, coming kind of full circle, here's an interesting correlation. The shadow, when you really start reading a lot of the material, he had this power to cloud men's minds. Now, the origin of the shadow is that he
cloud or plow?
Cloud men's minds.
Okay.
Create this sort of hypnotic effect, and he had all these different sort of mental powers that he learned, guess where, in the Far East.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, since you've been researching these tulpas and you've been on this little journey, is there more and more coming up for you? Like, your book's going to come out soon. Or do you keep sort of adding to it as you go along here?
With the Tulpa book in particular, it's been kind of a bear to conquer this book, because there really is just so much material, and to try to keep it focused and sort of get the point across, and help people understand, one, what these things are all about, the potential, and hopefully help people think a little bit about what we can create in our lives, and on a larger scale, with things like the Slenderman. Do we really want to create negative thought forms and energies like that, or do we want to create positive things? So I think that at this point the book is pretty well defined for what it's going to cover, and once it's finished and out there, it's I've got a whole list of other projects to address. So it's the curse of the creative spirit, I guess. There's always something that is exciting to do the next time out.
Yeah, because over the last few years, we've heard so much about the Tulpa now, like way more than before, I would say. Like the guys on Mysterious Universe are talking about it, and it just keeps, maybe it's where we're at, Darren, I don't know, but it keeps coming up over and over again. So it'll be interesting to see in the next few years how much Tulpa talk there is, especially after your book comes out.
Yeah, and it's something, it cycles around periodically, because, as we've mentioned, Keel talked about it. Much later, Lauren Coleman wrote some about tulpas. So, you find every once in a while, it seems somebody comes up and addresses the possibility that a lot of the things that people are experiencing are the result of tulpas. People have suggested that UFOs, for instance, are tulpas. There's been suggestions that things like Sasquatch are the result of tulpas. This energy that gets built up and focused somehow, somewhere. And, this idea that if people are out looking for something, trying to spot a Sasquatch or a UFO or whatever, then they're going to help manifested into reality, at least for a brief time. So it's an idea that gets addressed every once in a while. And at the same time, nobody's really done a full, exploration of some of the origins and everything connected to it. And that's where I'm hoping, this book will fill that void.
Maybe that's what Greer does. He makes Tulpa UFOs for people to see out at his little...
Nothing wrong with that.
Now, I tell you who's done some modern experiments and work with this is my good friend Bill Murphy. A lot of people might recognize that name. Bill was on Fact or Faked on Sci-Fi. But he actually, it's not just a TV star guy. He was, someone who had a good, solid background in field investigation prior to being on a television show. And he's also, he's got an incredibly scientific mind and has delved into a lot of different alternative things. And he's done some really interesting experiments. I participated with him on an experiment he did in California. And essentially a tulpa was created, at least a ghost appears to have been created, because in the unfolding of this experiment, an image was captured that no one has been able to debunk. Crime scene investigators have looked at this and tried to recreate it, and they can't do it. And it's a really fascinating. It's called the Pearl Experiment.
The Pearl
Experiment.
Experiment.
Look at it right now.
And Bill actually has a DVD coming out that talks all about the Pearl Experiment. And if you go on his site, I think he's got the promo image up for it, and it's amazing. It appears to be a woman in a green dress that was caught, in this photograph, and it's the result of this experiment. There's no historical record. This woman didn't exist prior to this experiment.
What's the website?
Well, it's the Pearl Experiment.
His website is Ghost Town TV.
Oh, yeah, I got it here. I got it. Ooh, I want to see if I can see this picture.
So speaking of field investigators, I was just talking to Chase Klutsky tonight, and she was saying you're one of her favorite guests too, and she and many others would consider you one of the best boots on the ground kind of field investigators. And is that something that you always try and? Oh, there's the picture. Yeah, wow, that's quite a defined picture. I've seen that somewhere before. Yeah, the Pearl. We're just looking at the Pearl Experiment here.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing stuff.
Be careful what you wish for. Yeah, see?
Right.
Cool.
So when's that DVD coming out?
I know. I talked to him last week, and he was doing final editing on it, so it should be out anytime. I think he's going to have it out before the end of the year.
Yeah, very cool. You have to send us a link when it comes out.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Hey, speaking. Sorry. Continue.
No, I'll be hyping it on my sites too, but I'll send you guys the info on it.
Yeah, speaking of DVDs, I was actually sniffing around your site a bit today, and it looks like looks like you got a little project going about this Mary Boyle girl from Ireland.
Yeah, that's a case I've worked on and off with another close friend of mine, Barry Fitzgerald, and it is it's Ireland's youngest missing person that's never been solved, and it's a weird case. On the surface it looks like a fairly normal quote disappearance, but there seems to be something more to it the more we've investigated. This is in 1977. This is a very rural area of Ireland, and it's in County Donegal. And this little girl, Mary Boyle, 6 years old, was strolling down a dirt path. She was just a little bit behind a relative who was carrying a ladder, and she just vanished. She just completely disappeared. There was a massive manhunt that searched the entire area, and they never found not a single clue as to this girl's disappearance. And it's Ireland is a land of mystery anyway, and when you look at some of these strange cases and some of the legends that surround the region where these things happen, it becomes quite intriguing. So there's sort of two sides to it. There's the whole mystery, and then of course there's the tragedy of this little girl disappearing and the family, suffering for all these years and never knowing exactly what happened to this girl.
I spent 3 months in Ireland back in 90 or 91, and I wish I would have been more into all this stuff then. I could have really kind of lurked around there.
WestJet flies to Dublin now.
Oh.
Yeah, I just got back. It's because I went. We went right after Paradigm, and I can't get enough of the place.
Oh, is that where you went?
Good.
That's where you just went recently? Is Ireland?
That's my most recent trip. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got lining stuff up for next year right now, but I was all over the place this past year, traveled quite a bit, and I know we were talking off air before this started, about that I was on Easter Island over the summer.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that.
Did you meet the Grimerica Moe there? RPA drew him, and I think we almost got enough RPJ. Sorry, and I think we've almost got enough listeners out there now that maybe there's a Tulpa Grimerica Maui somewhere on Easter Island.
Darren, we keep pronouncing it like the Hawaiian Islands, but it's Moai. It's Moai, right?
Moai.
Okay.
Yeah, Maui's an island in Hawaii.
Well, that sounds all right too.
Yeah. Either way, it sounds like you're trying to get away to somewhere tropical.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, just last week here was about minus 35 here, so Celsius. So
honestly, I can't blame you then.
Usually around this time of year is when you start dreaming of beaches and things of the sort.
Yeah. Well, Easter Island is just it is an absolutely amazing place. It really is. You have to kind of, usually when I do things like that, I of course don't do the typical tourist thing and, like to sort of, cut below the whole tourist level of things and start looking at what's really going on and what the people are like, what the area is like. And it's a very mysterious place. It really is.
So how deep are those, I've seen some pictures, but I never know if you can never know what's real and what's not these days. I find on the internet, but pictures, it looks like they're buried over half buried in most instances. Yeah,
well, it's hard to say. There's a lot of different moai all over the island in the different locations, and some of them, they've started excavating and finding that it's not just a head, that it's has a body attached to it too. But most of the sites you're just going to see what you see typically like in the photographs and stuff. What is it's mostly just a head and then a very short representation of the body below that. And some of them are on these sort of stone pedestal-like things. Some of them are sitting solitary, and then you'll have other areas where there's just a whole long line of them, and there's some that are falling over and laying down. It's just you wander around the place, and it's kind of mind-boggling. And the areas where the moai are, there's such a difference. Going from location to location. I noticed. There's some of them that you just have sort of this really heavy sense of, my God, what were the people going through who created these things here? What was happening? And other areas, it just seems to have a much more positive vibe and representation to it.
Huh. So is there still quite a controversy over, when and how those were created?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's Easter Island itself, of course there's historians and archaeologists out there who will swear to you they've got it all figured out, and they know who and why, but that does not seem to be the case. And there's just there's so little evidence really when it comes down to it to really explain. And of course, the natives, were pretty much wiped out because the natives of east of the Rapa Nui, they were sold off to slavery, and there are people on the island who have tried to revitalize the Rapa Nui traditions, but it's very difficult. And when you see things, like there's a huge production, kind of several productions that are, titled like the cultural ballet or the different dances and so forth. And you go and see these guys, and it looks like you're watching something that is Hawaiian or Tahitian and things like that. So I talked to some of the natives there, and they were quite honest with me. And said, we've had to recreate a lot of this from other, Polynesian traditions, and taking ideas here and there from different islands in the Pacific to put together what we, think is a close representation of what was going on here. But it remains a mystery, that's for sure.
Some of the etchings in some of those pictures, too, are eerily similar in style to some of the carvings you see at Göbekli Tepe on some of the columns.
Yeah.
And they're both
that too.
Buried.
Yeah, which is very strange. And, of course, you kind of come full circle, too, and you can think about the black-eyed beings, because although I couldn't find one, I was told that there were at least a couple of the moai on the island that at one point had solid black eyes where the eye placements were. And, if you go to look at some of the images from Göbekli Tepe, you'll probably run into Urfa Man. And Urfa Man is this human, this male figure statue that they found at Göbekli Tepe, somewhere probably between 10 and 12,000 years old. And it has solid obsidian eyes. They took the time to carve solid black eyes for this thing. And that's a weird statue. I haven't been to Göbekli Tepe, but I've talked to a number of people there, even archaeologists, who say that Urfa Man is just something kind of unsettling and weird about
he's pretty
standing
creepy.
in front of it.
He's pretty creepy
Robert
looking.
Schock. In fact, Robert Schock, I was talking to him about it. He said, there's something unsettling about that thing.
Yeah, it reminds me of Robert Schock talking about, maybe there's some similarities between Göbekli Tepe and Easter Island, and we want to have him on it eventually too. His chat was also fascinating at Paradigm there.
Oh yeah, he's a great guy, and he's been to Easter Island, of course, a number of times too. So
I figure both. I figure they're both way older, and they just buried just from natural causes, and that's from like some civilization lost way before our time.
You think so?
Yeah, that's my theory. Put it in the book. Put it in the book.
Put it in the book.
We don't have a book yet, but we're going to start one now. That's our first prediction.
Well, there you go. But yeah, an amazing place. If you guys ever get a chance at Easter Island, it definitely should be on your bucket list if you're interested in these kind of things, because it's just, it's incredible.
Is there any beaches or anything there I can sell to my wife?
Oh yeah, there's beaches there, sure.
Perfect.
It's an island, so you're not going far before you hit the water.
Perfect.
So do you have any plans to go to Göbekli?
I definitely want to, but it's probably not going to happen next year, because I've got a lot of other travel that I'm lining up, and some other projects. And you were mentioning, Graham, about this whole boots on the ground, as our friend Chase is fond of saying. And that's pretty much what I try to do. I don't get as much writing as I'd like to done, because frankly I spend a lot of time in the field and actually going to the sites and interacting with people, and that's always been my preferred approach. I try to take a very journalistic approach to a lot of these things, and stay very open-minded about the possibilities to explain some of this weird phenomena that goes on in the world. And my early influences were people like John Keel, Jacques Vallée, excuse me, people who had a very kind of holistic view of all of these weird events, and tried to look at it from a lot of different angles. And I do the same thing, but I feel the necessity to actually go out and investigate, and meet with witnesses, and That's really what fulfills me. It's one of the reasons I didn't write for a very long time, was because I was just so daggone busy traveling and doing these things. But I do enjoy writing, and it's been nice to get the books out and being able to meet more people in the field and interact with more people. Guys like you that come to the events and so forth.
Isn't Göbekli Tepe in Turkey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about going to Turkey.
Yes, it is.
I think Turkey, Turkey's the next troubles for that pipeline, or I don't know. I've heard some conspiracy people talking about Turkey quite a bit anyway.
Yeah, the railway.
They say watch Turkey.
I know, it could be.
The
the next place to go.
Asiatic rail.
Yeah, the whole.
Yeah, that's right. China's super fast freight, right? Freight train.
Yeah, that's what I love about going to those conferences too, is meeting guys like yourself and how just interacting with you guys, and it's so we appreciate you guys when you can be real open and chat with everybody, and yeah, it means a lot. So have you always had such an open mind then, David? I mean, you've been learning so much about all these different spiritual traditions too. Like, have you always been like that, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I was kind of the black sheep of the family, and I grew up in a rural area of North Carolina. And there was, this, I always tell people, this stuff, it finds you as much as you find it. And I can remember, in the 70s being interested in these things. And there really, there was no bookstore in town. At that point, there was nothing really on television. I had found a couple of things, in like a pharmacy bookstore. And I remember finding Chariots of the Gods when it came out, for instance, and, a few things like that. And of course, in the mid-70s, In Search Of came along, which was just, mind expanding for me. But the weird story, or the synchronistic story that I have from when I was young, was that, living kind of literally in this little country town, these people came and built a house, just a couple lots over from us. And when I went over and met them and started talking to them, it was an elderly couple. And lo and behold, this woman turns out to be a spiritualist. Now, she was probably the only spiritualist in that half of North Carolina at the time, and I just, I was like, wow, what's a spiritualist? So all these questions, and I started talking to her. So I started, after school, a lot of days we'd go over and chat with this woman and ask her all these questions. And then, of course, one day I go over to visit her, and she's reading Fate magazine, and I'm like, what is this? And I've never seen it before. And, I pick it up and I'm looking through it, and, of course, she tells me to drop by and visit the next day. And when I did, she presents me with this huge box with several years of Fate magazine. And she says, I don't think I need these anymore. Why don't you take them?
Well, there you go.
So, my joke to people is that, very mysteriously, I was too ill to go to school for the next week or so. Oh my God, I can remember just barricading in my room and just reading this. And, the whole world opened suddenly, because I thought, my God, here's people researching Bigfoot and UFOs and, haunted castles. And, I think I wrote away for every damn thing in the back of the magazine that you could get. I just really started plugging into this world, and I thought, geez, man, and and I've never been the same since. As far as the spiritual stuff, I was always very interested and open to that too, and kind of some of the same things happened. As I was growing up, I started meeting people who were practicing different traditions, and I started learning from different people, and you get into the flow of life. It's like Joseph Campbell says, you follow your bliss and everything else falls into place around it. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I've always tried to follow, and it's always worked for me. And following those things, I always found myself in these synchronistic moments, where the right person would come along, and I'd meet someone, and I'd meet someone who'd say, you got to come to this party tonight. There's going to be this, shaman from such and such over there, and just the people I've met and the things I've encountered. It's constantly been like that, and it's interesting because when I was young, I initially thought that they were sort of two separate things here. One, the whole paranormal field, and I use that term very broadly, and two, the spiritual side of things with the shamanic traditions and all that. But really, they melded together very quickly and very easily for me, and I realized that now a lot of these tribal guys and alternative thinkers, they're looking at this phenomena differently because it's part of their culture, and they're not closed to the idea of it. They haven't been steamrolled by the mass media or the scientific dogma that says no, this can't be real. So it's always kept me very open-minded, and my approach has always been that way as a result.
So besides meeting a tulpa, anything else strange, like as far as like pretty hardcore paranormal stuff, like UFO sightings or anything like that?
I had a lot of weird experiences, to tell you the truth, and slowly over time, I'll let a few of them out there. There is one in the new book in Strange Intruders, and that is I saw a grinning man. Now, do you guys know what the grinning man is?
I don't think I do.
I don't. I'm just learning as we speak.
Man, he is fast on that Google, isn't he?
I mean, besides being a man that's grinning, tell us more.
Well, the original story came from one of the
creepy one. Oh,
yeah, it's another creepy one. In New Jersey, there was a flap of UFO sightings, and these two boys spotted this bizarre figure as they were walking home one night, and he was very tall. He was wearing what was described as a green jumpsuit with a bright silver belt, and he had this just bizarrely large grin.
Like the
on
Joker.
His face.
It sounds like the Joker.
Like the Joker. It's very unsettling. So what happened for me was that I was driving with this friend of mine in North Carolina, and we were on this very rural road. There's, a farmhouse maybe every, quite a few miles between each one. But for the most part, you'd come to these long stretches where there would be nothing, just woods, dense woods. So we're driving along, and my friend's name was Tom. He was driving the car. And Tom, he he always had mixed feelings about hanging out with me, because he swore that whenever he was hanging out with me, that weird things were going to happen. And, I think that sometimes you get this interesting dynamic that's created by certain people, hanging around together, doing things together. And that did seem to be the case when Tom and I were doing things, just odd, unusual things tended to happen. So we're driving down this country road. We come along this stretch, and there's this curve that comes up, and ahead of us on the right-hand side, we see a figure standing just off the road. And of course, we're chatting and we're thinking, this is really bizarre. Why would a person be way out here? And what is this guy doing? So as we approached this man, it was one of those moments where it seemed like time slowed down. And it seemed like we were going very slowly by this guy. And since he was on my side, I'm kind of locked on watching him as we pass by. I'm looking, first out the windshield and then out the side window. And this man is probably, around 6 feet tall. He's wearing what appears to be a top hat, a long, dark coat that's kind of, his attire reminds me of something Victorian. He has his right hand is up underneath his chin, and he's sort of rubbing his fingers together. And he has this impossibly large grin. And my response was the same thing you said, Graham. I thought, my God, it's the freaking Joker. It's this distorted, smile. And, beneath the coat, there appears to be this silver belt. Can't really see anything else. I can't see his other hand, which is he's holding straight down at his side. And as we pass him, and that weird moment happens where things are moving slow, just as we get past him where I can't see out the side window now, I kind of whipped my head around really quick to look out the back windshield. And the second or two it took me to do that, this guy had relocated himself. He's now in the center of the road staring at us.
Wow.
As we pull away from him.
Yeah.
And, of course, I'm immediately, yelling at Tom to stop the car, turn around, I want to see what this is about. And, his reaction is, hell no, I'm not stopping the car. This is some psycho, it's like some nut job. He's watched Friday the 13th too much. He's going to try to kill. This whole debate rages for, a moment or two. I finally convinced him, look, just turn the car around. We'll just go back. I just want to see if he's still there, just finally I get Tom, taught him to turn around. He hangs a U-turn. He goes back to the spot. We creep back around that area. The guy's nowhere in sight. And, of course, as soon as we got close enough, I jumped out of the car, which really drove Tom mad. He's yelling and screaming, he's going to leave me. I better get back in the car. But I had to look around. I had to see, And there's really, there's nowhere this guy could have went. The woods are very dense, especially someone dressed like that. It's not going to pick their way through the trees very easily. There's no sign that he was there other than some of the weeds being mashed down a little bit where he was standing. And there's just nothing else. So, that was a really bizarre incident. Again, it's one of those things that it's creepy but subtle at the same time. And that makes it almost, more unnerving.
And Tom saw the same thing?
Yeah, oh yeah, he saw it. Yeah, his description was exactly the same afterwards. And, later on, there was a storm that night, for instance. There was some UFO sightings in the area. And, some other strange things. The house next door to Tom's was hit by lightning. And, just some bizarre things. And I later, it's one of those things that I've went back to a number of times and tried to dig more and find more information. And years later, when I talked to John Keel about it, he had reported quite a number of grinning men. And, Keel told me, he said, you just have to dig more because I guarantee you'll find more UFO sightings. And he was right. When I went back even a few years later and addressed it again and started looking at the time frame and expanding the search out a little bit, there were a number of UFO sightings in that area. And, there were a few other weird incidents that I found. There was a woman who saw what she described as a hobo clown running across the road. And I thought, wow, that's kind of curious because that sounds very similar to, the type of thing we're looking at here with these grinning men. And they're just bizarre figures. They show up. There's actually quite a few reports of them, people that have encountered them, and they seem to be humanoid, but they don't quite act, right either. And there's some things that are distorted by this incredibly large grin that they display. Hence the name.
Maybe just a happy guy.
In the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere, yeah.
So in all your research and everything, you're looking into quite a bit of spooky shit. So, what does it take to scare David Weatherly?
I don't know if I've ever been asked that question. I don't know if I can answer it at this point. To really scare me, I'm not sure.
Nothing yet. Then.
Nothing yet, I guess.
Chuck Norris.
I've been in a lot of situations where people became frightened over something going on in an investigation, and I tend to be the guy that's running to the point that they're all running from because I want to yeah, I want to find out what this is and get the evidence and so forth. So,
So speaking of experiences and stuff like that, and different parallel sort of realities, have you researched psychedelics at all, or have you what's your view on the consciousness expansion of psychedelics?
wow, that's a wide open question. There's God, we could talk a whole nother hour and a half about that. I think that when you go down that road, the issue is that a lot of people have abused it because it became sort of a part of pop culture, and people were using it as an escape. When you go back to the shamanic traditions, a lot of the tribal cultures that use it's really all part of a larger process that helps people reach an altered state. Mm-hmm. So you'll get things, for instance, a good example of what I'm talking about, the Huichol Indians, who, practice a lot of things that revolve around the use of peyote. But really, the practitioners, they don't all take peyote because there's a whole altered state that arises from the very process of going through the ritual of gathering the peyote and, getting to the point of using it and so forth. And I find the same thing with other cultures around the world that I've experienced, that, sometimes the whole point is the transformative process of the ritual itself. And really, in a lot of cultures, it becomes less about the substance and more about the ritual. And truth be told, there are a lot of ways to enter this shamanic altered state that don't involve hallucinogens. They are an avenue, but then you've got things, like ritual drumming and dancing and other ways to enter that trance state. Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, I guess that's my answer to that. I think that, the potential is mind-boggling, and, if more people would allow just that transformative process to come into their lives to expand their awareness, however they need to do it, whether it's through prayer or meditation or some kind of ritual or whatever it takes, I think we'd be living in a much more balanced world.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Fucking A. Well, go ahead, Dave.
Oh, you guys have been pretty quiet. I hope that I've kept your interest tonight.
Oh, no, 100%. I'm just kind of taken aback and taking it all in. If there's one thing for sure, you're definitely a great storyteller, and it must be, it'd be great to be out sitting around the campfire one day and just listening to you tell stories.
Yeah, the other thing is I like to let you talk to and not try not to interrupt your thoughts and your stories and stuff like that. I mean, it's been fascinating talking with you, really, and I'm gonna read your books when that next one comes out for sure, and it's just mind blowing stuff.
Yeah, and it's all endlessly exciting to me. I've been intrigued about with this stuff since I was a kid, and it just my enthusiasm for it doesn't taper off in the least bit. It really doesn't.
And you have all these different things coming up. You mentioned you've got a lot of different projects. What are some of those coming up?
Yeah, it's going to be 2014 is going to be pretty exciting. I think I'm going to stay quiet for the most part on it, and I'll start slipping stuff out as it all develops. I do have a few events already booked for the first part of next year. My schedule just fills up so quickly. A couple that come to mind, I will be at the Grey Ghost Paracon in San Francisco, and that is on board the Hornet. It's a benefit for the ship, which is a haunted ship. My buddy Bill Murphy will be on there, actually, along with me at the event. So there'll probably be some talk about some of the Tulpa topic.
Maybe I'll send my Tulpagram.
That one's in late February.
And then what about
the weekend of the 21st?
Okay.
And then I will be in I will be speaking in London in April. There's a tentative event at St. Augustine, Florida, and the dates haven't been set for that yet. It's probably late March. And lots of other stuff. So it's like I said, it's going to be a big year.
Are you going back to the UFO Congress this year? Not.
I don't know. I'm not speaking at it. I'm not sure if I'll be there or not. It depends on my travel schedule.
Yeah, it might conflict with the Gregos Paracon there a little bit.
Yeah, I can't remember when because they've moved that, I think, again. It might be the weekend before or something, but I'll be in. I'll be doing some international travel during part of that too, so I might not even be in the country.
Where can people track you down? Twitter, Facebook, all the.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've got all that stuff. I've got a blog at twocrowsparanormal.blogspot.com. That is TWOCROWS paranormal.blogspot.com. You'll find a badge on there for my Facebook. People are welcome to friend me on Facebook. You can purchase the books at leprechaunpress.com. And let's see, what else? I do have a Twitter feed. It's twocrowspara. And check those links out. Like I said, the blog and the Facebook page are a good place to keep up with, my latest projects and guest appearances I make and so forth. And if people have some kind of intriguing story they want to tell me about, you're welcome to email me. You can reach me at twocrowsparanormal@gmail.com. The only thing that I ask is that you're patient with me because of my schedule and my travel. It often takes me a while to get back to people, but I do answer emails.
All right, David.
Yeah, here's hoping we haven't created any Tulpa black eye kids that are going to show up at the studio here.
Well, if we have, they're showing up there, not at my house.
That's right.
Well, it might be too cold for Tulpas here.
They might freeze in the igloo. I don't know.
But maybe that's how they get you, because it's so fucking cold out that you can't not let a kid in if it's minus 30, and then
That's
bam.
right. Right. They're going to tell you they're cold and they want to come in.
Yeah. Well, thanks again for the chat, David. It was great, and maybe we'll have you on again in the future. And good luck in all your travels.
If any kids show up at my door now in the winter this cold and I can't see their face, I'm just gonna kick them. As long as they're not my own.
Well, hey, it's been a pleasure being on with you guys.
Yeah, it's been great, Dave. We're definitely looking forward to the next book. We'll make sure we link to everything in the show notes, where to get your books and all that stuff. And hopefully we can have you on again when your new book comes out.
Sounds good, man. I look forward to it.
All right.
Okay, Dave. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, guys. Take care.
That was our conversation with David Weatherly. What'd you think, buddy?
Great chat. Great stories, as always. I could have sat here and listened to them all night. I'm sure, hopefully, nobody was in any place too spooky when some of them were going on.
Yeah, like you were saying, I had the whole thing pictured in my head, right? This whole thing in Tibet and his little meeting with the
yeah, he can really put you in the place when he's telling his stories. And you can find him, like he said, over there at Two Crows Paranormal, and we'll have linked to that, and of course all his books and everything else in the show notes. And it was a great chat, and we'd definitely like to thank him for coming on.
Yeah, and I meant to mention, he's also been on a lot of TV shows and radio shows too, so you can find him in all different forms on the internet. I meant to ask him about, he was in Watchers 6 with L.A. Marzulli, and we just didn't have a chance to talk to him about that.
Yeah, but I'm sure we'll get to it next time, because we'll have him on when his new book pops out for sure, if he wants to come back and regale us a little more and some campfire tales.
Yeah, for sure.
And I definitely recommend, like, the Black Eyed Kids book is great. Like I say, it's their short 10-page chapters, and you can kind of chip away at it and give yourself a little spook before bed if that's what floats your boat.
So we got lots of guests coming on, and after in the new year here, January, February, lots of different options.
Yeah, starting our first full year at Grimerica.
Right. Yeah, we're just over 7 months now, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's actually pretty well the anniversary of the opening of the website is this Saturday.
Yeah, right.
The 21st. The
Yeah.
website's a year old, and the podcast is May 21st.
How it's changed already, eh? Crazy.
Yeah. It's a growing machine.
So if you want to get a hold of us, you can email at us at info@grimerica.
There's no info at grimerica.com.
Is there not
There's
anymore?
feedback at grimerica.ca and Darren at grimerica.com.
And Graham at grimerica.com.
Yeah, you can find us on Twitter at Grimerica, and Facebook is Grimerica as well. So,
Like us.
Like us on Facebook. Write us a review. We haven't given a call out for reviews in a while, but iTunes reviews are a big help. So, if you can, go write us a review and throw some Grimerica in somebody's face for Christmas.
Thanks again to David Weatherly.
Yeah, and thanks to RPJ for coming on as well. As always, guys, we'll have links to all these guys, the stuff we talked about, and all their books and everything else, all the music you heard, and
In the show notes.
in the show notes.
All right, buddy. Have a good Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, guys.
Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on the mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of pale light. known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit? Yes. Settle? Not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human